feel free to disagree with anything I say here. This is purely my opinions based on my experience so far in 6.1. And let's get started. So what do I think suits to be the worst perk in the game? So anything that I deem down in F tier, there's usually a good reason for that. The perk just functionally isn't useful, or it's so like situational that it just makes no sense to use. So, what I think is the worst perk in Dead by Daylight on the Survivor side at the moment, I think it's Red Herring. Right there. This perk is just unnecessarily difficult to set up, and the payoff is just so minimal. Hell, there's a chance it doesn't even pay off. I like the concept of the perk, don't get me wrong, but do I think it's useful in the context of trying to do literally anything? No. There's actually a better chance this perk will screw you over than it will help you. So, use it at your own risk, really. Right. Next up then, we've got, I think it's 7 perks in F tier, so these are the ones that I absolutely just do not recommend bother to even look at, because it's just not worth your time. Next up then is This Is Not Happening. This one right here. This Is Not Happening, what it does is it improves your skill check zones by 30% when you're injured. Now, unless there is one synergy that this perk is useful for, and it's if you're injured and have fast track. But other than that, this perk is not helpful at all. Most people nowadays in Dead by Daylight are generally able to hit skill checks just by themselves anyway. And sacrificing a perk slot just to have a slightly better chance of hitting a great skill check, specifically while you're injured, not really worth it at all. Let's be honest. So moving on then, number 105, Kinship, which in this particular thing is known as Camaraderie. That's what it used to be called before Stranger Things was removed. So let me just try and find its icon. There it is. Kinship. Once a survivor enters within 16 meters of you while you're in second stage on a hook, your struggle timer will freeze for the next 34 seconds. This perk is sparingly useful. There's only really 1 or 2 scenarios where this can even potentially benefit you, never mind scenarios that it actually will benefit you. So obviously there's the scenario of you're getting face camped. Survivor comes in, they see you're getting face camped, they activate Kinship, they move on with their lives. Excuse me for a moment. I don't know what that was. Yeah, so it can be useful against face camping, but even that's questionable. It doesn't guarantee you anything other than 34 seconds extra on the hook. Not that you get extra points or anything for that, it's just you literally just do nothing for 34 seconds. So, not really worth looking at, let's be honest. Next up then, number 104, Buckle Up. This one right here. This perk, it's like, don't get me wrong, there is a use case for it, and it's particularly against slug builds. And while they are starting to become a little bit more common in Dead by Daylight, this perk still just isn't useful. It's nice to know the recovery progress when you're within 48 meters, based on how I think it's colored the aura is. It's either it fades from white to red or it's red to white. I can't remember. The closer they are. But do I think it's worth using? No. Let's be honest, We're Gonna Live Forever is just a better perk in general. Pair that with botany knowledge, 150% healing speed in the dying state. Just there's genuinely better options that do more than Buckle Up. Buckle Up, when you heal a dying survivor, both you and the other survivor see the killer's aura, but 9 times out of 10, either the killer's already on their way back to you, or the killer is not even remotely interested in you. Like, it's a very rare occasion that as soon as you heal someone, the killer's making their way straight back to that position without knowing at least where one of you already are. So the cycle's just going to end up keeping repeating. Next up then, number 100... Actually, sorry, that's 103, that was Buckle Up. I completely forgot to put this perk in here. Up the ante, at number 104. This perk increases your luck by 3% per survivor alive. That doesn't count yourself. So, at the start of a game, every survivor will have plus 9% luck. What does luck do? 2 things. It increases your chances of self-unhooking, and it also increases your chances of escaping a bear trap. Other than that, no use for this perk. Can be good in a meme build with slippery meat and what do you call it? The jar of salty lips. But is this perk good like in any other build or on its own? No, unfortunately not. So definitely worth passing on. This one's going to be a hot take, in my opinion. A lot of people will disagree with me on this one. But number 102, Self-Aware, also known as Fixated. This perk increases your walk speed by 20% and also allows you to see your own scratch marks. This isn't very useful. Unless you're pairing this with Lightweight every game, this perk just is not useful. 20% walk speed, it's very situational that you're going to be able to walk away from a killer. And also, Urban Evasion allows you to crouch at walk speed and be less visible in general. Because obviously you're half the survivor's height, effectively. So it's much easier to hide than it is to just walk away. Moving on then, number 101, to close out F tier, Ace in the Hole. This perk, what it does is, when you're opening a chest, it grants you up to a purple add-on, guaranteed. And it has a 50% chance of giving you a up to yellow add-on for a second add-on. It also guarantees that if you escape with an item, you keep its add-ons. So say you go into a trial with, say, Engineer's Toolbox with Wire Spool and what's that other one that increases the repair speed? Instructions manual or something like that. I can't remember. Maybe that's efficiency, actually. If you escape with that toolbox in your hand, you will keep the toolbox and the add-ons. Is it useful? Not really. It's very rare that Ace in the Hole will actually win you anything. It's nice to get an extra bit of usage out of an item, don't get me wrong, but is it going to be game saving? 99 out of 100 times, the answer is no. So, that closes out F tier. Next up is D tier. These are the perks that are more usable than the ones in F tier, but I still wouldn't personally recommend them. For various reasons, which we'll get to shortly. Starting off D tier then is Hope. Hope increases your movement speed by 7% after the executes are powered. Permanently. Now, on its own, this perk isn't very useful, but it can stack haste statuses with other perks, which could be a little bit broken, which I do hope behavior do fix that. So that survivors cannot run like at 121% movement speed. Or whatever it may be. Yeah. It's very rare that this perk's going to actually get you out of a game. Pre-Dead Hard nerf, this perk absolutely would have gotten you that little bit of extra distance that you would have needed. But because you can't really do that anymore, Dead Hard for distance, like in combination with Hope, it's not actually as useful as it was before, even though the like time limit was removed from it. By itself, Hope doesn't actually really mean that much. It needs to be used in combination with other good perks to have a chance, really. Don't get me wrong, the 7% movement speed, it's still nice, but by itself it just isn't enough. Since it's literally the only thing it does. Moving on then, 99, Inner Focus. One of Hattie's perks. Inner Focus, what it does is it allows you to see other survivors' scratch marks, and anytime a survivor gets hit within 32 meters of you, see the killer's aura for 5 seconds. Information's nice, don't get me wrong. Is it useful in most cases? No, because you more or less already know where the survivor is, or there's other means to know where the killer is more often than Inner Focus. So you could probably pass that up for some other options, like, for example, even Dark Sense, even though it got nerfed in my opinion, is still more useful. You look at Empathy, you'll see where the injured survivor is when they get hit. And that's up to 96 meters away. Object of Obsession, you'll see the killer just randomly every 30 seconds, and anytime they see your aura. Like, there's just so many other options that do the same thing but better. So that's why it's pretty low down. Next up then, the first of the boons, Dark Theory. Why is Dark Theory bad? Because it's only 2%. 2% haste is basically nothing. You're moving, as opposed to just 4 meters per second flat, you're moving at 4.08. There's very, very few situations where that 0.08 will actually make a difference. Not to mention that you have to be specifically within the boon's range, or just outside of it for the first 4 seconds. Not to mention the boon itself needs setup. Personally, I don't think it's a good perk, but on specific tiles, I don't want to say it can be game-changing, because it can't. But it can get you one extra loop that you otherwise probably wouldn't have. But only on very specific tiles. Most tiles you'd still get hit. So, do I think it's worth running? Not really. Run at your own risk sort of thing. But, yeah. Moving on then. Next up, number 97 is Slippery Meat. Like Up the Ante, this one increases your odds of getting off the hook by 4%. It also grants you 3 extra attempts to get off the hook by yourself, giving you a total of 6. And yeah, that's about it. Is this perk useful? No. 8% to get off the hook is still not worth taking, even though you do get 6 attempts at it. You're looking at a 1 in 12.5 chance. So 2 in 25. You want to be fancy about it? Is 2 in 25 a good chance? No. Don't go for it. Even though you do get 6 attempts at it, it just isn't worth it. Even when you're running this with up the ante, your odds are still worse than what it would be if you were just to run Deliverance. The only issue with Deliverance is that if you don't get it active before you get hooked first time, is that obviously you'll not be able to use it. But the thing is, it's a lot easier to activate Deliverance than it is to chance your way with a, 17% chance using this and up the ante. Deliverance just beats it every time. You'll always be able to get 3 Deliverances a game, max. Whereas up the ante, there's entirely a chance, or Slippery Meat, sorry, as well as up the ante. There's entirely a chance that you'll still just not get it, even with the 8 or 17% chance. Just over a 1 in 6 at that stage. Still not worth it, in my opinion. Next up then is No Mither. This perk, what it does is it keeps you permanently injured with a few trade-offs. Your grunts of pain are reduced by 50%. Your blood pools are no longer existent. You can recover as many times as you want from the dying state. You recover 25% faster from the dying state. And I think there's one other thing that I'm forgetting, but yeah, it's a massive trade-off perk, which it's good if you want a challenge. But other than that, there's no real reason to run this 90% of the time. It does have good synergies with Dead Hard Resilience is not happening, and what's the other one that I was thinking of just there? I did have 4th perk in my head, but it does have good synergies with some stronger perks. This is not happening, not so much, but it definitely does have the synergy there for it, since you are permanently injured. Do I think it's worth running? Most of the time, no. For memes, absolutely. Number 95, Dance With Me. This perk actually would have been higher up, but my biggest issue with this perk is 3 seconds, unless you're running with Lithe, isn't enough time to lose the killer. And especially now that Iron Will can't hide your audio at all now. It only reduces it by 75%. Dance With Me indirectly has been nerfed for that. Now, pair it with Quick and Quiet, and you may still be able to trick the killer once during a game, but do I think you're going to get it more than once? Unless the killer's really not paying attention, I don't think you are. I genuinely don't think you are. Number 94, Appraisal. One of Ality's perks. This perk allows you to rummage for items again in chests that are already opened. Good if you need that potential med kit or potential toolbox just to speed things up a little bit, and the chests have already been opened. Or alternatively, you get to a chest, you get something you don't want, you get another reroll effectively. If you just lift the item out of the chest, drop it somewhere and start rummaging. Or alternatively, I think you can just rummage anyway with an item in your hand, thinking about it. As for why I think it's D tier, like, the items are nice, don't get me wrong, but there's very few items in the game that you either can just bring in, or like, this perk by itself will not guarantee any decent items. I'm thinking about it, I should probably have lowered Plunderer's rating for this. I think I did even still, but it's not D tier, I'll say that. But yeah, appraisal, like, as I say, the item's nice, don't get me wrong, but it's not worth most of the time. Pharmacy. This perk got nerfed for some reason. Can't even find it. Where's P? There. This perk now guarantees you a green medkit anytime you search a chest while you're injured. And it also allows you to open them 80% faster. Is this perk good? If you can get a green medkit before everyone else opens the other chests, yes. But because it's so heavily dependent on A, knowing where the chests are, B, teammates not knowing where the chests are, and C, just not being interrupted. Because if you get interrupted and the killer either downs you or has sloppy butcher, it's just going to go to waste immediately. Not to mention that you can't run pharmacy with botany knowledge anymore or self-care. There's no benefit to running those perks with the medkit anymore. As a matter of fact, it would be a handicap to run botany knowledge. And to close out D tier, we got Guardian, otherwise known as Babysitter. What it does is when you unhook a survivor, they gain haste for the first, I want to say 8 seconds. And they also see the killer's aura. And they don't leave pools of blood or scratch marks, possibly. Something like that. This perk I originally rated like pretty low down. I think I rated 3rd from worst. But I've seen it used a little bit more often, and knowing where the killer is, like, obviously if they decide to turn back, go for someone else, not ideal. But there are some specific weird use cases for this, which is why it's at the top of D tier. I still think the effects are a little bit weak, honestly. 8 seconds really isn't a lot. It's better than what it used to be, I'll definitely say that, but do I think it warrants it being any higher than that? No. There's just other perks that are better for other reasons, either because they're permanently active or their effects just outclass Guardian. So moving up to C tier then. This is a perk that I do genuinely like using when I'm doing like very stealthy builds, but Comp Spirit is the first one to enter the C tier. What they changed from last patch to this patch is that Comp Spirit now guarantees that you won't alert crows, and you will also not scream. That's guaranteed now. Also, what they added was that you cleanse blessed totems silently and open chests silently, albeit at the expense of opening / cleansing / blessing slower by 30%. I think that's a little bit too much. You could probably lower that to 20% on tier 3. And I wouldn't be overpowered. Because let's be honest, if the killer will probably only care about hex totems, which they'll already know the location of those. It won't matter to them if it's being cleansed silently. As for what do you call it, chests? Again, like, they'll still hear the chest opening, because for some reason they didn't mute that. So if you still open it within the killer's tower radius, or they're just like very nearby, they'll still hear the chest opening, as I find out. And like, again, it does counter Doctor, Infectious Fright, Dragon's Grip, like any perk that makes the character scream. That won't happen. Do I think it's worth running? barely. As I said, it's very, very specific use cases for it. But the cases they are used in are, generally speaking, reasonably okay. I still think the numbers on the chest and totem stuff need tweaked, because this perk is still pretty weak, and I don't think it'll improve the usage rate, which was the aim of this patch, by the way. I don't think this perk will be used any more than it previously was, so I think they've failed in that regard. Number 90. This perk has definitely crept up the list. Lightweight. Lightweight now reduces scratch marks by 3, 4, 5 seconds, as opposed to 1, 2, or 3, and also makes the scratch marks appear more sporadically. I think, from what I saw, the change was actually okay. The 5 second is definitely noticeable. But is it enough to lose a killer? Most of the time, no. Even at the scratch marks being reduced by half, it's still not enough. Now, in combination with other perks, is a completely different story. Pair this perk with a couple of other stealth-based perks, and lightweight could actually be pretty brutal to go against. But then you're sacrificing stuff for, say, an exhaustion, say your gen speed, say item restoration. Like, it doesn't matter. You're prioritizing stealth over anything else, which, if it works, then it just means that your teammates may suffer more. But if it doesn't work, then your build is pointless. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Is it worth it? Loosely. Next up, this is one of the perks that's depend on other people's actions. Corrective action. One of Jonah's perks. Corrective action basically mitigates any other survivor's failed skill checks, as long as you have a token. Each failed skill check takes away 1 token, and every great skill check you get gives you a token. This perk, it's good for newer players. Or when you're playing with newer players, I should say. Because it means that if they make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. They've got a backup to stop them from making too many mistakes that just get easily punished. But is this good, like, anywhere even above mid MMR? Or lower mid? No. Most people just try to go for goods. The only way it'll be useful is if people get greedy and start going for grits, which personally I am guilty of, but the thing is, like, hitting a great skill check isn't absolutely necessary to win the game. It speeds it up, but it's not exactly going to break the bank if you hit a good. So most people will try to play safe and go for the later end of a great skill check, just so that they can guarantee a good if they don't hit it in time. It's very rare you see people missing skill checks when you're not playing with newer people. Next up, Premonition. It's very much inferior to Spine Chill, especially now after the patch. When you're looking within a certain radius, I think it's 45 degrees, and the killer is within 36 meters, this perk will pop. Go on cooldown for 30 seconds and wait until the next occasion where the exact same thing happens. The information is too vague. You can still bamboozle yourself by using this perk. If you're in like a walled area, there's entirely just a chance that you walk face first into the killer anyway. And if it's a stealth killer, so pity help you. That's all I'll say. I don't think it's particularly useful. Premonition. It can still give you narrow escapes, don't get me wrong. before even starting a chase. But is it worth it? Most of the time, no. Next up, number 87, Dark Sense. This perk got nerfed. Hard nerfed, in my opinion. So, not only did it lose its best part, being that it activated 5 times guaranteed per game. Like, obviously, if the generators got done. But now it only activates when the killer's within 24 meters of you. Which, there is entirely a chance that the entire game, the killer will not enter within 24 meters of you. And the thing is, even if they do, there's a pretty damn good chance you already see them. Or you had a very good idea where they were. Making Dark Sense pretty moot. Now, if you're indoors or in like a walled area, again, this can be useful. More useful than Premonition, definitely. But it does require generators to be done, and also has a limit on usage. So, not the best. Number 86. Solidarity, one of Jane's perks. Anytime you are healing a survivor while injured, 50% of the progress is converted to your own healing. So if you heal a survivor from 0 to 100, and you're also injured, your healing bar will start at 50% when they go to heal you. Sparingly useful. It's not very often that you'll be in a position where the survivor will allow you to heal them first. Unless you specifically were the one saving them and you're on no hooks where they're on death hook. Like, it's not that easy to get people to cooperate with you when you're running Solidarity. Same goes for any, like, just perks that involve other survivors, just in general. Like, corrective action as well. Like, you're obviously betting on people failing skill checks. Like, I don't think it's particularly great design, just in general, that it relies on other survivors' actions. Next up, Blood Pact. This perk is not very good, because it forces people to stay together when they honestly probably don't want to. Usually it's better to split up. And even in the case that they don't split up and the killer's already on them, like by the time the unhook happens, there's a pretty good chance that that range is going to get broken anyway. It's just 7% haste when you get saved or save the obsession, and it does allow you to see each other's aura, which I guess is all right, but the information just isn't like meaningful enough. And the speed boost as well, like once you go out of 16 meters of each other, you lose the speed boost, which again, it's only 7%. There's not a lot of instances where 7% is gonna get you an escape by itself. It's better than hope, don't get me wrong, there is an additional effect there. But do I think it's gonna win a game? More than likely not. And to be honest, any perk below here is pretty much not gonna win you a game at all. Number 84, Rookie Spirit. This perk, it's not terrible, because the information it provides is good. It shows you the regressing generators after you've hit 3 good skill checks. Now, the issue with the regressing generators is that there's a very good chance that you're not going to be able to get to the generators. Be it because you're already engaged on another generator, be it because you're engaged on chase, be it because you were forced off the generator that got kicked. Like, there's just so many varied reasons as to why Rookie Spirit, while the information, as I say, is useful, either you already knew it was happening or you just don't have the means to prevent it. Even in a case of Spry with friends, like, this perk's not very useful. Because petty help anyone trying to describe where a generator is that's regressing. People seem to be very bad at that in this game, including myself. Unless it's one very specific landmark that's easy to identify. I just don't think it's that one. Next up then, 83, Urban Evasion. Nia's perk. Basically crouch at double speed, making you crouch at walk speed. This perk can get you out of a sticky situation if used in tandem with other stealth perks. This perk is more often than not a detriment to use, because if you're using it constantly, like to get around the map, you're just slowing yourself down. Like, why not run if you're not in any risk of, like, being caught? It just doesn't make sense. And there was a game there recently that I played with, I think it was Rune. Possibly. Might have been Penguin. I'm trying to think, because it was on Shelter Woods. Oh no, it wasn't with anyone, it was just on stream the other day against the Blight. Two of the Fangs were running Urban Evasion. And they were using it religiously. That is more detrimental to the team than it is helping. Because it means they're not getting around fast. I just don't think it's good for, like, actually getting around the map. Number 82, in that case, Left Behind. One of Bill's perks. What this does is when you're within 32 meters of the hatch while it's open, it will show you its aura. This perk very heavily depends on you being the last survivor. So you may not even get the chance to reap its benefits. Not to mention, the hatch is a random spawn unless you're using an offering, which everyone gets to see anyway. So why would you run Left Behind in that particular scenario? The information's good again, but there are a couple of conditions that need to be met prior to it being useful. Particularly that the killer doesn't or the hatch doesn't spawn closer to the killer when you're looking for it. Because if it does, there's nothing you can do. Next up then, Plunderer's Instinct. This perk used to be like top 20 for me. Until they nerfed keys. This perk could have single-handedly gotten you escape. And it still can technically, but it's just not as easy to execute. Obviously the RNG element does come into play as well. It definitely increases the odds, it's definitely noticeable. But there is entirely still a chance you just get a brown item from it. Entirely still possible. Can still get you out of the game, just not nearly as likely as it was before. Next up then, Self-Care. This perk was nerfed from 50% to 35%, and I think it's suffered immensely from it. Because its best build was in combination with botany knowledge, which itself has been nerfed, by the way, in my opinion. So, Self-Care, it now is just infinitely inferior to Circle of Healing. Because self-care only applies to yourself, Circle of Healing applies to everyone while the totem stands. And the totem can be reset. What's there not to like about Circle of Healing in comparison? I just don't see like any reason why anyone would run self-care over Circle of Healing now. Next up then, Power Struggle. Another one of Elidy's perks. Power Struggle, once you get the 15% wiggle bar, if the killer walks through a pallet, you can pull it down while you're on the shoulder. By itself, not very useful, but there are builds that play around Power Struggle and can actually make the game a lot harder for the killer. Apologies. A bit of a coughing fit. Yeah, so there are definitely builds that Power Struggle uses, or is useful in. But like, unless you're specifically running this perk with Flip Flop, there's a pretty good chance that you're not going to get the pallets done straight away. If at all. Other thing to note is this perk is actually very powerful against twins, like in combination with Flip Flop. Because if Victor downs you and you're at a pallet, and Charlotte's nowhere nearby, you're guaranteed to get Power Struggle. So keep that in mind. Moving on then, Breakdown. Jeff's perk. Why can I not find it? B. There it is. One thing I should note, by the way, regarding Jeff's perk, while it's on my mind, Aftercare, for whatever reason, does not have an icon, but I will mention it as it comes. Just to make it clear that this is where it is. Aftercare is not here, it's later in the list. So I will say that as I say when it happens. So Breakdown, what it does is it breaks the hooks for 3 minutes that you get unhooked from, and it shows you the killer's aura for the first 5 seconds of being unhooked. This is quite good Breakdown because it means that the killer has to actively look for another hook. They can't just wait out the timer. And if they do, then that survivor will have lost 3 minutes on their bleed out timer, which could be pretty bad for the killer later in the game if they end up in a situation where they're left with that survivor and another one. Could end up quite bad for them. So sparingly useful, but when it hits hard. Next up then, a perk that got buffed in the last patch, Tenacity. The change that the grunts of pain are reduced by 75%, very good change in my opinion. Definitely worth taking more now than what it used to be. Especially in the scenario where you're left in a slug situation. Getting that extra movement speed as well as reduced grunts of pain is going to be very useful for just map traversal while you're done on the ground. So it's still not like overly useful. It's very rare that people or killers slug still. I know I said earlier it's on the up, but admittedly I only really see it like once every, I don't know, probably about somewhere between 7 and 10 games still. So it's still not like that common. But if it works, it works. Next up then, Saboteur. This perk is a weird one. So, it got a minor quality of life change there in that update where you can now see Scourge hooks in yellow. But what it originally did was any aura or any hooks within 56 meters of the downed survivor are revealed to you. There are chances that this perk will save someone. It's absolutely possible. But more often than not, you're going to be in a position, unless you're specifically running a build to account for like where people are on the map, it's going to be quite hard to account for that. Because it's entirely possible that they go down right beside a hook, and there's literally no chance you get to them in time. So while the idea of the perk is really good, there's entirely just a chance you won't get to use it for various reasons. Plus the sabotage action not only lasts like 20 seconds for each hook. Like it's enough time for the killer to get over to the hook. It gets saboed. They drop the survivor. They go chase you off. They wait like 10 seconds. They pick the survivor up again. And the hook's back. There is entirely a chance that happens. So, I think it should be a little bit more rewarding to sabotage a hook when the killer's nearby, but it is what it is, I guess. Next up then, another one of the boons. Exponential. What this does is it increases your recovery speed by 100% while within the boon's range. This perk has got me out of a game before, several times. It can carry. But with it being limited to the boon's range, you have to rely on the killer just not destroying it. Which most killers will. Pretty happy if Shattered Hope's the thing. So, effect's really nice, and it can get you an escape by itself. But more often than not, it won't. Moving on then, Boil Over. Horse perk. Horse perk, basically what it does is it increases the effects of the wiggle by... what is it? I can't remember what they changed it to in like the second to last update. Let me have a look, since I have a little bit of a chance. I know the wiggle progression, if the killer drops from a height, is immediately increased by a third. Struggling effects are increased by 80%. Right. And then the killer's auras for hooks is blocked within 16 meters. Which is nice. So I think that, like, on its own, this perk isn't particularly that useful. But in combination with other perks, it can be quite brutal to go against. Not really much else to say, to be honest about it. It's just an okay perk that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Next up, Poised. This hides your scratch marks for the first 10 seconds after any generator is completed. This perk can... more often than not, it won't do it by itself, but if used with another stealth perk, namely Iron Will, there's a good chance you're going to lose the killer. Pretty damn good chance. Or if you aren't injured, you've got a very good chance of losing the killer. 10 seconds is more time than it looks, but if the killer's not paying attention, then yeah, you'll lose them. Moving on then. Last of Jane's perks, Head On. This perk's sort of hit and miss. Quite literally. The range of the stun is a little bit inconsistent at times. Sometimes I feel like the killer's very close to me in a locker, and I get out of the locker, Head On doesn't activate. Yet when I'm playing killer, I feel like I'm miles away from the locker and I still get hit with a head on. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, and most of the time this perk is only really useful for ruining the killer's day. It actually isn't all that useful, like, by itself. I know Virgo, another person I play with, sometimes they use head-on in combination with a flashbang. It can be a pretty weird combo that makes the killer drop chase on whoever they were chasing. But again, like, that's where the trolling factor comes in. Like, this perk by itself, unless specifically used with quick and quiet during a chase and the killer doesn't see you get in the locker, like, it's just more often than not worth running. Moving on then, Autodidact. This perk is actually quite good, but there is one problem with it, and that's setup time. I swear, anytime I use this perk, I just don't get any healing skill checks, like, ever. And I don't understand why. Because all this perk does is it changes how the healing progression works. It doesn't change the skill checks that much. It doesn't decrease the odds are still the same. The only thing that's different is there's no great zone anymore. Which is fine. The first 2 tokens will do negative progression, and the next 3 tokens will all do positive, and anything beyond the 5th will obviously do plus 50. Which is good. But again, like, I swear every time I use this perk, I feel like the skill check odds are lower. Just rigged against me. Next up, Deja Vu. I rated this perk quite highly. And I still do regard it as one of the better, like, information perks. Even though it isn't C tier. Basically what it does is it shows you the 3 generators that are closest together. If you don't know the map layouts, this is absolutely a perk worth taking. The 5% repair speed is negligible, now that the generators take 90%, or 90 seconds, as opposed to 80. So, that's still pretty negligible, as I say. You can forget about that even existing. 4.5 seconds off the generator time. But the effects of seeing what gens are close together is quite useful, especially if you don't know what your team are doing. You might be able to last ditch save the game by, like, doing a generator that will force things to not go into a 3 generator scenario. But it still comes down to what your teammates are doing. If your teammates want you to go into a 3-gen scenario, they will absolutely make you go into a 3-gen scenario. You just don't have control over that. If you get chased while Deja Vu keeps popping, good luck. There's nothing you can do. Next up then, number 69, Medal of Man. This perk is a weird one because it's again another niche one that requires activation by protection hits specifically. You need 3 of them, and after the 3rd one, a hit that would put you into the dying state is ignored. Not sure how it works in combination with being in deep wounds already, because technically it doesn't give the endurance status effect itself, it just stops you from taking damage. But again, I'm not entirely sure how that interacts. I'd probably put it a little bit higher if it did stop you from going into the dying while in deep wounds, but I don't think it does for some reason. Moving on then, any means necessary. This one allows you to reset pallets once every 60 seconds. It's also useful information to know where people are being chased. Because if you see pallets just getting dropped around a certain area, you know the killer's over there. Or the survivor in question is throwing. Quite literally. So it's good information. And if the killer doesn't break the pallets, you can go and reset them. When you get a chance. I think it's genuinely an okay perk. It's not always going to see its uses, but when it does, it's nice. Next up then, Lucky Break. Another one of Yui's perks. Let me see if we can find it. So for 60 seconds, this perk stops you from showing, I think it's scratch marks and pools of blood, if I'm not mistaken. But once that 60 seconds is up, you'll just return to normal. After the new patch, they added recharge by healing other survivors. This is a problem that I was talking about earlier. Actions that require other survivors being competent. This perk specifically, to recharge it, requires you to be healed. You cannot recharge this while you're injured. Otherwise, you're just losing it as you heal. I just don't think the perk is worthwhile in that regard. "60 seconds isn't a lot to begin with. If the killer sees you and you can't break chase with them quick enough, there's entirely a chance that you'll just not get use out of this perk at all. Alternatively, you use 45 seconds of it before you get downed, you're off the hook, and there goes your remaining 15 seconds in the time you've been healed. Like, it just feels lackluster when you look at it from that perspective. Number 66, We're Gonna Live Forever. This perk effectively got a Soul Guard effect in the new update. So, what it does now is anything that used to trigger it previously, so any type of save, a safe on hook, or a protection hit, that will activate the secondary effect now. The 100% healing speed, like in the dying state, is still there. But if you heal a survivor while the secondary effect is active, they will receive 10 seconds of endurance after they get into the injured state from dying. It effectively is Soul Guard, how it works. So, moving on then, number 65, Bite the Bullet. This is one of Leon's perks. There it is. Bite the Bullet basically mutes your, what do you call it, healing. It mutes the survivor grunts of pain, and it also mutes the actual healing sound as well. This can be good in scenarios where you need that little bit of extra time and need to make the killer think that you're not there. In combination with self-care, you can actually escape a chase with this. But with self-care being nerfed, botany being technically buffed for this purpose, but nerfed overall, in my opinion. Like, more often than not, it's not going to be worth running this perk, but the effects are nice, don't get me wrong. It can get you escapes, like from chases, just randomly. If the killer's not expecting it, they're not ready for it, there's a very good chance you will get out of a chase. You just need to get your timing right, and, well, hopefully you get it. And finishing off C tier then, Blast Mine. This perk, I rated it much lower last time I did a tier list, but I've since picked it up myself. It's fun to use, don't get me wrong, as are quite a few of the perks below here. Like, again, these perks may be bad, but they are fun for the most part. At least by comparison to other perks higher in the list, I should say. They're bad. But Blast Mine can buy you a few extra seconds that you otherwise wouldn't have had. If the killer doesn't see the visual cue for Blast Mine, they're getting hit with it. And the thing is, Blast Mine ignores Lightborn, and can also be stacked with Residual Manifest, which can cause absolute chaos for the first 30 seconds after Blast Mine hits. So that's fun. And another thing is, it can be used to lure survivors to your location. If people know you're running Blast Mine, and they see a generator randomly turn yellow, they'll know that someone's there. And either they can go for a heal, or they can help the person, or they can know to stay away from there. Decent perk all around, I would say. And that finishes off C tier. Now, to start us off with B tier, we've actually got Hattie with Overzealous. This perk got buffed in the last patch. I still think that this perk should be when you enter the dying state as opposed to when you lose a health state. But other than that, I think it's a solid perk. The 16% repair speed for cleansing a Hex totem, or 8% for cleansing a Dull totem, is still a solid, like, amount. That 16%, that would take you, what? That's 1.16 charges per second. Generator takes 90 seconds, so let's get the calculator. 90 divided by 1.16 saves you 12 seconds. 12 and a half. If you get the Hex totem. Now, obviously, there's the catch that killers may not run Hex totems at all. In which case, you're still saving like 6-ish seconds on a generator. I know I said Deja Vu, the 5% is negligible. But if you can get that 16%, which hexes are still pretty common, even with Ruin out of the picture. Like Blood Favor, Crowd Control, Undying, Devour Hope, Haunted Grounds, all of them are still common. Like to a reasonable degree to justify running this perk. So I think you can definitely get away with that. Next up then, Technician. This is basically your own bailout perk, similar to Corrective Action. If you're not so confident in skill checks, you can use this and take the risk. The only issue is that you will lose a little bit more progress if you do fail a skill check, but the killer won't get a noise notification for it, so they'll not know where it's happened, and to their knowledge, the generator may not even be worked on at that stage. The other main thing then would be, obviously, the repair noises are less audible, which is nice. But if someone else is working on it with you, that becomes moot because their audio is normal. All in all, an okay perk. I wouldn't say that it's a staple in anyone's build, but it's got its uses. Next up then, Situational Awareness, otherwise known as Better Together. When you're repairing a generator, anyone within 32 meters will see your generator highlighted in yellow, and anytime a survivor goes down, you'll see the aura of every other survivor for the first 10 seconds. Useful information, just across the board. There's still a chance that people won't come over to you, but if they need a heal, they'll know you're there. So, generally speaking, useful perk. Doesn't really provide anything like on the front of gen progress, aside from potentially bringing a person over to work together with. Yeah, just a solid perk, I guess. Number 60 then, Flip Flop. the perk that I was talking about earlier with Power Struggle. This perk is surprisingly okay. I think I put it in lower C tier last time. I think it's the bottom of B tier now because, like, seeing that Dead Hard has been nerfed and people are actually willing to try out other perks now, I've seen this combo a lot. Flip Flop is actually surprisingly useful. Pair that with Tenacity and Power Struggle, or Boil Over, and the killer's going to have a hard time hooking you. Moving on then. Number 59, Self-Preservation. Anytime someone gets hit within 16 meters of you, your scratch marks, blood pools, and grunts of pain are hidden for the first 10 seconds, I believe. Could be the other way around. 16 seconds for 10 meters. I can't remember. Let me just have a quick look. It's one of Yunjin's perks. That's SC. Yeah, it's 16 meters for 10 seconds. 16 meters isn't a huge distance and is very much avoidable, like, to begin with. Not to mention that within 16 meters, there's a good chance the killer already knows you're there, but there is entirely a chance that if you're in a bad position where, say, you get unhooked, the other person gets down by a special attack, self-preservation activates at that stage and you get 10 seconds of absolutely no noise whatsoever. Or visual indicators as to where you've gone, unless the killer has direct line of sight with you. There are very good use cases, it's just a shame that it doesn't happen very often. Moving up then, number 58, Visionary. You see the auras of any generators within 32 meters of you, and after a generator gets completed, this perk deactivates for 20 seconds. This perk's very good if you don't know the map layouts very well, and you just need to see where generators are on the fly. Absolutely worth taking if you get the chance, but again, it's one of them training wheels perks that you will eventually be able to go without. Next up then, number 57, Small Game. First of the totem based perks. Small Game, it shows you it pings when there's a totem within a cone of 45 degrees, getting gradually smaller every totem that gets cleansed. Also gives you a totem counter for how many are left. So if you know there's totems left that aren't hexes, then you might want to get rid of them for no one escapes death purposes. So good in that regard, but the pings can get a little bit annoying, I will admit. Plus, if you have access to a map and counterforce, that's generally speaking a better combo. Moving on then, number 56, Streetwise. This increases all item efficiency by 25% for you and survivors within 8 meters of you. Yeah, it just gets a bit more out of your items. And this perk probably would have been higher had Botany Knowledge not got a significant reduction in efficiency. Because this is now the only perk that increases item efficiency in the game, Streetwise. There used to be 3. Self-Care and Botany Knowledge were the other 2, and they've both lost theirs. For specifically medkits in those 2 cases, but it is what it is. Streetwise is just not as good anymore in the case of medkits. It's just as good as it was for toolboxes, maps, keys, and flashlights. But I get the feeling we're going to see a little bit of a drop off for Streetwise. Number 55. This perk was the worst perk in the game up until last patch. Soul Survivor. Quite a shock to see it up on number 55. Getting the exit gates open in approximately 13-14 seconds, roughly, is a lot, like, is very game changing if you are the last survivor. This is effectively the survivor's answers to whispers in the end game. If it's 1v1. Pair this with Wake Up, and you're absolutely out of the game. You're absolutely getting out. No matter what happens. Unless you're playing against a nurse that is very attentive on Midwich, there's very, very good chance you're getting out with that build. If you happen to be the last alive. Not to mention that it still retains its old effect of the killer losing aura rating the more survivors that are dead. So moving on then, Resurgence is number 54. Anytime you get unhooked, your healing bar starts at half. Basically, heals take 8 seconds as opposed to 16. Without the use of Will Make It. Not to mention that we'll make it 4 seconds. That probably was a bit of a tongue twister, I've just realised. Will make it, will make it. Yeah, so honestly, just a good perk for if you need quicker heals, but don't want to rely on other people bringing Will Make It. Number 53, Clairvoyance. You get to see, I think it's most auras, including the hatch, for 10 seconds after cleansing a totem. Is the perk good? Yes, in most cases. I think there was a range on it, if I remember. Clairvoyance. Yeah, it's 64 meters, which is still solid. It's effectively Detective's Hunch with additional benefits on demand, but the problem is that with boon totems being so prevalent in the game at the minute, people aren't going to want you to run this. Especially with Circle of Healing being the main, thing nowadays. Especially for healing. People are absolutely going to flame you for cleansing doll totems. Hex totems are a different story. Getting rid of hex totems is no problem at all, but once you start getting rid of doll totems, people will genuinely not be happy about that. Next up, Wake Up. Increases the exit gate opening speeds by 25%, and also shows other survivors that you're opening an exit gate within 128 meters of them, and also shows you both the exit gate auras when you're within 128 meters of them. Useful information, especially if you end up in a chase while the last gen goes up, but you lose chase and then don't know where the doors are. That happens to me quite often, to be honest. So I think that aspect of the perk is actually very useful. Personal opinion, as I say. Next up then, Renewal, also previously known as Second Wind. A Steve perk. Second Wind, after you heal someone set fully, that is, Second Wind activates. Next time you get unhooked, you start broken. After 26 seconds have passed, you automatically heal to fully healthy. Now, the issue with Second Wind is that it's the 26 seconds part. 26 seconds is a lot of time. And while you can still activate it, even in lieu of being in deep wounds, because, say, killer's been pretty close by, you've been hit in the deep wound state, if you manage to mend before Renewal pops, you will still heal to healthy. But if you don't, I think it only takes you to injured. So that you do need to be careful of. But if you can somehow outlast 26 seconds, then yeah, absolutely. Perk's definitely worth it. Number 50. Quick and Quiet. This perk is a weird one. There's not many instances this perk will definitively say that oh yeah, this perk alone got you out of the game, or caused you to lose the killer, or caused someone to be, like, say if you used head on in combination with it. It's not very often that this perk will be able to get you those instances, but the fact that it can does make it a decent perk, minimum. Not to mention that Quick and Quiet can fool killers at loops. If they're not expecting it, they may double back based on the fact they heard no noise. And you may just gain distance that way. So it is entirely possible that the killers will bamboozle themselves. And not to mention that it works with windows, pallets, and lockers too. So no matter which of the three you're at, you will be able to use Quick and Quiet, which is always good. Next up then is Empathy. Empathy allows you to see the auras of injured survivors up to 96 meters away, and yeah, that's it. Just an honest, good perk in my opinion. Does it take the piss with any like weird mechanics? No, it's just good information. You know where the killer is when they hit someone, you know where the survivor's going when they're injured, and if you get the chance, you can also make your way to them. Which is also why in number 49 we have Empathic Connection. Empathy in reverse. Any injured survivors will be able to see your aura. So they'll be able to come to you, and you'll be able to heal them 10% faster. That means that it's entirely the other survivor's choice whether they want to make you in danger. Because if they do, then that's like a bit scummy, but okay. I'm sure the person can deal with it. It was their choice to run the perk. But I think that 10% healing speed is a little bit more beneficial than seeing where people are most of the time. Unless you're against Myers with Scratch Mirror on Larry's or any map like that, Empathic Connection will be better than Empathy, in my opinion. So moving on then, number 47. Inner Healing, also formerly known as Inner Strength. After cleansing a totem, getting into a locker while you're injured will heal you over the period of 10 seconds. Again, solid perk. With boons being more common in the meta now, people are going to run this perk less and less, but if you want them heals, and you don't want to rely on other people for it, and are willing to take the chance that totems may be in or out of your favour, by all means, go for it, because the 10-second heal is definitely worth it. Pair it with Quick and Quiet, Decisive, and Head On, and you can actually cause some weird interactions with the killer if they know you have Decisive and don't want to get hit by it. Very, very interesting interactions when it comes to that. Next up then is number 46, Fast Track. For every time someone gets hooked other than yourself, you'll gain 3 tokens. Anytime you hit a great skill check, Fast Track will use all of the tokens, giving you 1% extra progression for hitting a great skill check per token. So say something happens, something weird happens, you get down to 1 generator, you've got 9 stacks of 3, so 27 tokens of Fast Track. Or sorry, not 27, 18, because everyone's been hooked twice. Though it is possible to get up to 27. Everyone's been hooked twice. You've got 18 stacks of Fast Track. You're at about 70% on the generator. Killer has Tinker. They know where you are. They're on their way right to you. If you pop Fast Track in that time, that's a guaranteed generator finished at that stage. unless the killer was already very close to you. Even the fastest killers will not make that distance for 18 tokens. Now, is it feasible to get 18 tokens every game? No. I'm going to be first in at that. But getting the chip, like, for every 3 tokens is still beneficial throughout the game. Next up then, a perk that makes fast track easier to use, but will use your tokens immediately. Stakeout. Every 30 seconds you spend in the killer's territory, you get a token. Every token you get can be spent while on a generator. Good skill checks will be converted into great skill checks. This perk is underrated, in my opinion. Very, very underrated. Getting skill checks great constantly is much more effective now than it ever has been. And if you're worried about not hitting greats constantly, getting this will help you just start hitting greats just for free. Now, do I recommend using this all the time? No, because that way you're not going to learn just to hit the great skill checks naturally. But if you're not confident and don't want to take the risk, by all means, go for Stakeout. It's a good perk. Number 44. This is the one that I've been waiting to talk about. Botany Knowledge. This perk has been drastically nerfed in my opinion. This perk used to be top 20 in my opinion. 33% healing speed was a decent amount. 33% medkit efficiency was very good. 50% healing speed is better, don't get me wrong. 1.5 charges per second as opposed to 1 or 1.3. 1.33, yeah, it's definitely better. But here comes the problem. Medkits. Brown and green ones specifically. You find a brown medkit in a game. Use it to heal yourself. Botany Knowledge says no. You're now in a position where you're only getting 0.8 charges per second as opposed to your usual 1 per second. And the thing is, the rate that it's still being used at is the exact same. So you're getting less out of your medkit, and you're not even getting a full heal. In the case of a brown and green medkit. Now in the case of a yellow medkit, you are still getting a heal. Albeit just. And the purple medkit, you lose the second heal, but you still get 1 absolutely guaranteed. As long as the killer doesn't have Sloppy Butcher, pair it with Build to Last, and medkits can still be strong. But if the killer does have Sloppy Butcher, which is more common nowadays because of the hemorrhage change, where your healing will regress, you could be in trouble if you're running this perk. This perk genuinely could be detrimental to run. Could you piss off, fly? I didn't ask for your presence. Yeah, so I think this perk is definitely worse than it was before. Yet barely anyone used it before the patch, and even less people are going to be using it now. One of them ones that I just disagree with the change. Dark Sense was another one. Number 43, Counterforce. Every totem you cleanse, the furthest one from you will be shown to you. First totem, and you'll also cleanse totems 20% faster per totem cleansed. So theoretically, if you're cleansing all the totems, including Pentimento totems, you will gain up to, what does that end up working at? 180% totem speed. So you're cleansing at 2.8 charges per second, meaning the last totem will go down in less than 7 seconds. The bar will be very quick. Yeah, so moving on then. Not really much to say there. It's just a good perk. Another one that got buffed. Even though it was such a minor change, it's such a major effect. No one left behind. Having this active now, prior to the exit gate being opened, can actually help another survivor get out of the game if the killer is face camping. This perk can help in that particular scenario, which most killers will resort to camping and or slugging at that stage in the game. 50% action speed on all altruistic actions is massive. Not to mention that it still gives extra blood points for altruism as well at the end of the game. Number 41 then. The one that increases all of your auras by 16 meters. Open-handed. Great perk. There's just so many different perks that are range-based. And it now actually works with Dark Sense. It'll increase that range to 40 meters. Unfortunately, it no longer stacks with itself. Bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. Definitely still a very useful perk as long as people are running aura reading. It also works against one killer perk called Knockout, which, if you don't know, basically you won't see the aura of down survivors until you're within 16 meters of them. Open-handed will make that 32. At tier 3. Genuinely a good perk, but only if auras are in play, which most of the time there will be, but not always. So you can't always rely on it. Number 40 then, Soul Guard. If you're cursed by a Hex Totem, you have the ability to recover from the dying state infinitely. And when you do get recovered from the dying state, you will gain endurance for 8 seconds. This perk caught me off guard so many times, because I was not aware until after I did the last tier list that Soul Guard also procs if you get healed from the dying state. Not if you recover, if you get healed from the dying state. It activates no matter what. As long as you go from dying to injured, no matter how you did it, Soul Guard will activate. So pair Soul Guard with Adrenaline, and that could be a funny combo. So yeah, strong perk. Number 39, a perk that probably most people thought would have been gone by now. Flashbang. Flashbang allows you to craft a flash grenade after having done half of a generator. And it can be used as many times as you want. You can only carry one at a time, and you can't be using or can't be holding any other items when going to craft them, for obvious reasons. But flashbangs can be very useful to get saves. They can be useful to just generally blind the killer and stop them from knowing where they're going. Can be good to just as a diversion strategy, and they're just good for memes. Just a fun perk all around, and can make saves in crucial situations. Moving on then, number 38, Deception. What this perk does is it basically fakes you rushing into a locker if you're sprinting past one, and then your scratch marks get hidden for the first 3 seconds after that. This perk can be very, well, as the name would suggest, deceiving on a killer's perspective. If you know what's in play, you know to avoid going after people to start with. Or not necessarily avoid people going after people, sorry, I worded that wrong. You know to avoid checking lockers to start with. Unless you're absolutely sure they do not have deception, do not bother checking the lockers. Unless you also physically saw them get in there, it's just not worth it. Now, in the case that they have deception with head on and quick and quiet, that's a different story. You might want to check it before they proc head on, but again, only do that once you know all of them are in play. Deception by itself, it can be countered, but most killers choose not to. next up then, Breakout. I used to have very low opinion of this perk, until one particular game that I played on stream. Breakout single-handedly saved a game, which otherwise would have been lost. Picture this. You're on the game, you're versus a Huntress, you are at 5 generators and the first person is getting tunneled out of the game. This is pre like current patch, by the way. This is 6.0, I believe. So they get tunneled out of the game. They're dead. The first gen goes up. 4 gens remain. 3 players remain. And the other 2 players have Breakout, Boil Over, Dead Hard, and Saboteur, I believe. They stick together, very, very close together, without revealing too much where each other are, of course, because otherwise they both go down. But one, they are obviously both running Boil Over. They can't see, the killer can't see where the hook is. The other person's sticking close by to make the wiggle bar progress go on 20% faster. Actually, they didn't have Dead Hard, they had Flip Flop. So also their recovery counted for wiggle progress. So the killer just had such a miserable time trying to hook them. Then the killer downed me. And then they both apply Breakout. Breakout stacks on itself. So 40% faster wiggle speed. It's definitely better than it looks. And I regret saying that it was like lower C tier last time. This perk has changed the game for the better. That particular game that I'm referring to, all 3 of us were still alive when the last gem went up. And while only I escaped, I wouldn't have otherwise had Breakout not have been a thing. So that alone makes the perk minimum B tier from now on. Next up then, Smash It. Where is it? There it is there. Anytime you stun the killer with a pallet, you gain a 4-second sprint burst and then get exhausted for 40 seconds. This perk's good. It's good for distance. And if the killer breaks the pallet, that's even more distance. Just a solid perk overall. Pair it with Parental Guidance, another perk that I'm yet to mention. And you've lost the killer, basically. You've just lost them. 4 seconds of sprint burst, 7 seconds of no scratch marks or blood pulls. Yeah, they're not going to find you. Or scratch marks or grunts of pain, I think it is, sorry. They're not going to find you. They'll have lost you by the time they broke the pallet. As for number 35 then, another exhaustion perk, Balanced Landing. The only problem I've ever had with this perk is that it requires very specific areas on a map. And there's definitely times where you could just be left in a position where you can't use it because the areas that you can use Balanced Landing in are either too far away or there's just not enough to work with even when you do get to use it. It decreases the stagger duration by 3/4 and it also makes your grunts of grunts when you hit the ground muted entirely. And then it obviously causes exhaustion for the 40 seconds. But I don't know, the only hard thing with Balanced Landing is getting it to activate. It is still a solid perk though. If killers aren't ready for it, they're just going to lose so much distance on you that they otherwise wouldn't have. Next up then, number 34, Leader. This perk increases the speeds for healing, pretty much any action that's not repairing generators, I think it is, by 25%. And that includes the exit gate. It's just a solid perk. It doesn't affect you, unfortunately, but it does affect everyone who's within 8 meters of you, and then for the 15 seconds after they leave. Number 32, Windows of Opportunity. Again, good training wheels perk. And honestly, just a good perk in general, if you aren't too familiar with how map layouts can be. Which admittedly can take quite some time to get used to, so... If you can go without windows, great, but if not, it's perfectly fine to use it. You can see all the windows and pallets within 28 meters of you, and just work with what you have. Try and chain loops together that you can see, obviously, and yeah, you'll just gradually get better at chases over time, and then once you know what you need to do, you can do it without windows. Still a solid perk nonetheless, though. Last up in B tier then, Vigil. This perk's going to see a massive rise, in my opinion, because exhaustion is going to become more common. This perk will be more common because other meta perks will be less common. No one needs to run borrowed time anymore. Very few people want to run dead hard because they claim it's too hard to use, which half a second is tough, but it's not impossible. Obviously, dead hard for distance is no longer a thing as well. So Vigil, I imagine, will see an uprise. What it does is 30% duration reduction for most statuses that affect you. So yeah, things will take less time to recover, and you'll be able to use your exhaustion more often, basically. As I say, that concludes B tier. So next up, we're moving up to A tier. And to start us off, Pebble. I used to rate this perk as like an upper C tier perk. This perk has single-handedly allowed me to do so many things recently. It has allowed me to make saves I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. It has allowed me to save an entire team by itself. It has allowed me to escape. It has allowed me to help someone else escape. Like, there are so many things that this perk is useful for. And if the killer doesn't pick up on it, then yeah, this perk will just ruin their day. Because they'll be going to completely random places that have no, like, significant interest to anyone. So yeah, absolutely a worthwhile perk to get and run if you have the chance. Number 30 then, Built to Last. Basically, you can restore your items' charges 3 times a game. First time to 99%, second time to 66%, and the third time to 33%. I would say it's probably not worthwhile once you get to the 33%, but the 99 and 66 definitely worth taking because you get 2.5 uses out of your item basically. Pair that with Streetwise, and you're getting even more. Definitely worthwhile. Next up then, Residual Manifest. This perk blocks killer's aura reading for 30 seconds anytime you blind them. And that isn't just limited to flashlights. Flashbangs and blast mines also trigger this. This is very good for causing confusion. If the killer kicks to your generator and they have no idea where the remaining generators are, they're not paying too much attention, they could lose a generator or 2 just from Residual Manifest. Now, it's not always going to be the perfect scenario, as I described there, but more often than not, it will be helpful. For just distraction more than anything. Number 28, Detective's Hunch. This perk shows you the auras of basically anything within 64 meters of you. Be it totems, gens, chests, and I think there's one other thing that I'm not remember. But not that it's hugely important. The information is still massive, and It shows you for the first 10 seconds after every generator gets completed. And anything that is shown to you is also added to your map if you have one. So very useful in that regard. Next up then is Distortion. This perk got a massive, massive buff going into this patch. The fact that it can now be recharged just by being in the terror radius is massive. It allows you to identify a lot more aura reading than before. It allows you to prevent more aura reading than before. And yeah, it's another one of them perks that can now actually just help you get out of a game. Straight up. Number 26 then. Desperate Measures. For every survivor injured, you heal 14% faster. Up to a maximum of 56%. Healing speed's definitely going to be very useful, especially with Thanatophobia being more powerful now. Which is why Botany Knowledge didn't drop any further than like mid B tier, by the way. But yeah, Desperate Measure is definitely worth rolling. Applies to yourself and also everyone else, or not everyone else like Streetwise and Vigil, those sort of perks, but it allows you to heal yourself faster, it allows you to heal others faster, sort of thing. Next up then, this is the one that I can't do the icon for because it doesn't exist. It's Aftercare. Let me just quickly see if I can get it up here. This is it here, this one here. For some reason it doesn't appear in this list, but basically anytime you complete a hook, unhook, or a healing action on someone, or they do one on you, your auras will be shown to each other. And you can do this for all three of the other survivors. This effect applies until you're hooked. So you'll be able to see what everyone else is doing. They'll be able to see what you're doing. And yeah, it's constant good information. Knowing who's being chased and where at all times is massive. So that was number 25. Number 24, Deliverance. This perk is a free self unhook as long as you get a safe unhook beforehand. Can be very useful if you want to get off the hook very quickly. Can be very useful if you're not going to get unhooked. Yeah, there's just two very good scenarios that may not have otherwise been preventable. And given how solo queue is going these days, Deliverance could actually be a pretty good shout. As long as you're not first hooked, as I say. Moving on then, Parental Guidance at number 23. This perk basically stops your grunts of pain and scratch marks being shown for the next 7 seconds after stunning a killer. Strong perk. It used to be 10 seconds, I nerfed it to 7. But still very, very strong. And it can get you out of chases earlier than what you normally would have. Number 22 in that case, Bond. You just see survivors within 36 meters of you. Simple as that. Good information. It's not always going to be completely useful, but if you know that someone's working on a generator nearby, and you know that your generator can't be done, then it's a good indication for you to get off your generator and go to them. And hopefully they'll notice that you've gone off your generator for a reason. Hopefully, like, there's a good chance that won't work, but equally there is a chance that it will. The only real issue I have with this perk is it's used for sandbagging quite a lot. Which I don't really like, but it's just the nature of the perk, I guess, more than anything. Number 21, We'll Make It. Very strong healing perk. Allows you to heal survivors other than yourself at double speed for the first 90 seconds of any unhook. And it resets for unhooks as well. So if you're halfway down your timer, you're like, I don't know, maybe, like say, even close to 50 seconds have passed, getting another unhook will reset that back to 90. You'll get the full 90 seconds again. So it resets on itself. It's 90 seconds of double healing speed. No matter whether it's injured or dying. Doesn't apply to yourself, which, fair enough. Perk would be overpowered otherwise. But yeah, it's genuinely a good perk. Maybe less or so now that the endurance is base kit from Borrowed Time, but still very solid if you are no risk of being chased by the killer straight after unhook. Number 20, Repressed Alliance. This one I wanted to rate higher, but when I realised that the perk itself actually hasn't changed, but the gen speeds have significantly, this perk isn't actually as helpful as I would have hoped. 30 seconds is nice, but 45 seconds charge and then 30 seconds of the killer can't interact with the generator, nor can anyone else for that matter. 30 seconds of just not being able to interact with the generator full stop. Like, yes, it stops some gen regression perks from activating, but if nobody can get to that generator in time, the perk's going to activate anyway. Not to mention that the effect stacks with Deadlock and Deadman Switch. So if the thing gets blocked because of you using Repressed Alliance, and then someone else's gen pops, after Repressed Alliance pops or runs out, Deadlock will then trigger, meaning it's blocked for a further 20 seconds or 30 seconds, sorry. I don't know, like, losing that much time on one generator could be detrimental, as equally as much as it could be helpful. Still a strong perk, do not get me wrong on that, but it's just not as good as I was hoping it would be in this new patch. And I don't know why I didn't see that coming. So, number 19 then, Off the Record. This perk is very strong in its current state, but it's not game breaking like most people think. Basically, on top of its previous effects where your aura and grunts of pain are muted for the first 80 seconds of unhook, being unhooked, sorry, or escaping the hook now, you also get 80 seconds of endurance. But here's the but. If you do any conspicuous actions, you lose the endurance specifically. Plus, Off the Record no longer activates after the exegates are powered. So if you're unhooked before the exegates are powered, yes, it'll still activate, you'll still get the full 80 seconds. Even if the 5th gen pops like 40 seconds in, you'll still get the remaining 40 seconds unless you do something in those 40 seconds. But if you get unhooked after that 5th gen pops, you're not getting Off the Record. Which kind of sucks. But it is reasonable because 80 seconds is a lot of time to be getting endurance for. But what it does mean is that if you were using that much time to just potentially get the endurance hit, it means it's 80 seconds you weren't doing anything. I genuinely think people are overreacting about this perk, and it's not as broken as people think it is. Even I overreacted at the start. I'll be first to admit that. I overreacted. But 80 seconds, yes, it's strong in the context of the endurance, but because it requires you to not do anything during those 80 seconds, it's not as strong as people make it out to be. Plus, if you hit the person immediately, then the endurance is gone the same way it would have been if they had Borrowed Time or they didn't have either of the perks. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Speaking of Borrowed Time, it's next up. Obviously, with it being changed to 10 seconds, it's a little bit worse than before, but because there's 5 seconds base kit, it'll make it 15 seconds. Again, cancelable by conspicuous actions, but getting that 7% haste as well is also pretty useful for the extra 10 seconds. You could maybe make an a loop out of that. If the killer chooses to tunnel you, of course. Off the record doesn't offer that, but bar time does. And so does No One Left Behind, if it's after the last gen is popped. So, still a solid perk. I don't think it's a top 5 anymore. As a matter of fact, out of the top 5 that were previously there, there's only 2 that are still there for me. Moving on to number 17 then, Decisive Strike. This perk is still good for anti-tunneling, because if you get picked up within the first 60 seconds of being unhooked, without having done any conspicuous actions, you still get your skill check, as you normally would. The only main difference is you've lost 2 seconds on the stun duration. Now, this perk is useless against Nurse and Blight. Unless you're already at a loop, which the Nurse is not very favourable on, and the Blight will also have a hard time navigating. Now, the hug tech's being removed. There's still a very strong chance you're going down, even if you use Decisive Strike. And there's some other killers that will still catch up in a very short amount of time as well. Not the same as Nurse and Blight, but there's definitely other killers that can catch you pretty quickly. So that's why I think Decisive Strike's no longer number 1. It's now number 17, in my opinion. Number 16, For the People. This is a good, like, insta-heal perk. You're trading your own health for someone else's. Which, in the context of if the person is on death hook, it's absolutely worth it. If the person goes down just before they exit gate, it's absolutely worth it. Yeah, unless the killers save the best for last, there's a good chance that you're still getting an escape with For the People in that scenario. Very strong perk. Moving on then, number 15, Alert. Great information. You can see anytime the killer breaks something, that being a generator, pallet, or wall. That's near constant information. Killer is 99% of the time going to be breaking at least one of those 3. For sure, throughout a game. So, very strong information perk. If you want to know where the killer is at most times. Number 14, Unbreakable. This is a strong perk, but it does require the killer to be slugging. Or to be distracted by someone else to get the full use out of it. Which won't always happen. Again, similar issue to Soul Guard. Requires you to be slugged. No Mither as well. Requires you to be slugged. And if the killer isn't watching out for it, then yes, you'll pull it off. You'll get an extra attempt to run them around. You might even get an escape out of it, but there is just a chance you just won't get to use this perk. A lot of people would rate this like top 5. I personally don't agree. As I say, like same what I said earlier, slugging builds are definitely becoming more common, but they're not like so like unbearably common that like it's a must-have. I think people are overreacting in that regard. So, that leaves us with, I think, 2 more perks in this tier. Next up is Resilience. You gain 9% increased action speed for most actions in the game, including vaulting, still. And yeah. That's only while you're injured, though. The requirement to be injured is a little bit annoying. I know the perk would be overpowered otherwise, but you then have to 99 yourself, rely on the killer not having Sloppy Butcher, Have a way to heal yourself to 100 in the event that you do get chased while you're injured. Just there are things that can go wrong with using this perk. And 9% isn't a huge amount when you factor in like the specific uses. Different if like it was maybe 15%. It would definitely be a lot stronger in that regard to stay injured the entire game. But because it's 9%, like, there's very few instances where 9% is going to save you from anything. For any particular action. The only useful one out of that was the vaulting action, which, because Spine Chill has been nerfed, is not nearly as useful. I say nerfed, Spine Chill has only had the vault speed removed. It has otherwise been buffed, in my opinion. And to close out A tier then. Of the remaining perks there, there's only one here that fits an A tier. And that is Dead Hard. Previously in this, the last tier list I did, I rated Dead Hard 19th. Since then, my opinion drastically changed to where it was number 1 or number 2. Possibly even number 3. I think I'd rated it number 3 last time I did any sort of like perk ratings. But that would have been off stream. So, Dead Hard's number 12 now. This perk is still good. It's not dead, it's just much more skillful. Pulling off a Dead Hard now is so much harder than what it was previously. And it genuinely feels rewarding to use. It doesn't feel blatantly cheating. It's not cheesy. It just genuinely feels rewarding to use. And with that in mind, that's A tier. Moving on to S tier then, starting off with Iron Will. This perk's still very strong. 75% is a lot more than you would think. You have to be within like 8 meters to hear the survivor. And even that, it's very, very quiet. Now obviously Strider can counter that and make it to 25%. But that's still negligible. Like, if the killer's running Strider, you're running Iron Will, yeah, your grunts will be a little bit quieter than normal. But unfortunately, you're running 3 perks that game, effectively. But if you're not running Iron Will, then you'll just be not really affected at all. But most killers don't run Strider, you see. That's why Iron Will's still very strong. The only killers really that run Strider nowadays are Spirit and Nurse. And even then, I would say it's more so limited to Spirit than it is Nurse. Still a strong perk. It's not top 5 anymore in my opinion. But still a very solid option. Number 10 then. We're into the top 10. Object of Obsession is the one to drop out first. So this perk, it reveals the killer's aura anytime the killer can see your aura, meaning you can identify any means of aura reading at all. And if you're the obsession, every 30 seconds the killer will see your aura for 3 seconds and you'll see their aura for 3 seconds. So, bit of an information trade-off perk. You'll know where they are, they'll know where you are. But you can't get away with it. And the information is very much worth taking. If you can manage it correctly, there's a very good chance you're getting out. I swear to God, these flies. So. Yeah, so Object Obsession, fun perk to use. Much better than its original variant, and genuinely fun to use. Plus it gives you the additional speeds for basically anything, I'm pretty sure. It's definitely repair, healing, and sabotaging. Can't remember if it's anything else. Number 9, Adrenaline. a very good get out of jail card at the end of the game. If you're stuck in a situation where you're in chase, you go down, last gen pops, you can start running for 5 seconds, and you're getting a massive head start on the killer. Plus, just heals a health state, just in general. If you're injured and happen to be working on a generator, adrenaline will make you healthy when the last one pops. Like, I don't know, it's just a good perk. One of the best in the game. Has been the entire time since launch. It's not even that it's overpowered, because it requires you to have gotten to that stage in the first place. Like, if you do not make it to the end of the game, you do not get to use adrenaline. Plus, the other main selling point is that if the killer closes the hatch and starts the endgame collapse, that also triggers adrenaline, as long as the 5th generator hadn't already been done. Swear to God, these flies. Yeah, so moving on then. Number 8, Kindred. A very popular perk for solo survivor. Basically what it does is shows anytime you're on the hook, everyone else can see everyone's aura and the killer's aura within 60 meters of the hook. And anytime anyone else is on the hook, you can see everyone else's aura as well as the killer within 16 meters of the hook. That can stack with open-handed and be increased to 32 meters, which is nice. Excuse me for a moment. Sorry about that. So yeah, Kindred, open-handed will stack with Kindred and make it 16 meters, or 32 meters from 16, which is a lot of distance. You'll know exactly what direction the killer's going at all times from the hook. You'll know if they're going to you, you'll know if they're doubling back to the hook, you'll know if they're going to someone else. It's genuinely a very good perk, and a lot of solo survivors will run this. Even in the context of survive with friends, this is still a useful perk. Definitely worth taking. Number 7, in that case, Sprint Burst. Sprint Burst, what it does is it just gives you the 3 seconds of speed boost once you start sprinting. Doesn't matter when or what context you're doing it in. If you press that shift key and are pressing WAS or D, and you're not like already interacting with something, Sprint Burst will activate, giving you that Sprint Burst. Or the speed boost, I should say. You can 99 it, keep it ready for when you're most vulnerable in chase. Get that 3 second speed boost again, and away you go. Just keep looping as long as you can. Number 6, next to the boons, Shadow Step. While within the totem's range, your aura and scratch marks are no longer shown to the killer. This is massive. Having a little pocket on the map, just randomly, where your aura is impossible to see, is massive. And if the killer's not aware that it's there, they're going to have a tough time tracking you within that totem's range. Unless they are experts at tracking blood trails or happen to be running Bloodhound, of course, then they're going to lose you pretty easily within Shadow Step's range. It's kind of crazy. But that still leaves 5 perks. You can see them all there. There's your top 5. Not necessarily in that order, but these are your top 5 in my opinion. Starting off with Lithe as number 5. Lithe is genuinely a good perk. It's activatable when you need it. You can use it at any time. As long as you do a fast vault or even a medium vault. Getting them 3 seconds is massive in chases. And now with Dead Hard gone, this thing's truly showing its potential. And just how good it really is. Likewise is the next perk, Overcome. Overcome increases the duration of your speed boost when you get hit from healthy to injured or injured to deep wounds by 2 seconds. It increases the duration of that by 2 seconds, from 1.8 seconds to 3.8 seconds. That is a lot of distance, which only the highest mobility killers will be able to nullify. And even at that, they may not be able to catch up in time before something gets done. Either you're at a new loop, or you're just out of sight completely. Entirely a chance that happens. Number 3 in that case. Spine Chill. A lot of people think Spine Chill got nerfed this patch. Which, yes, it did lose its vault speed. But this perk actually got a massive buff. In that, this perk is now always active when the killer is within 36 meters of you. Getting that 8 seconds head start on the killer is massive. That gives you a lot of time to hide. And knowing if they're even coming towards you, if it's not a stealth killer, if they have a terror radius, you will know that they're getting closer. Because now they've added this charge thing, like it goes around a circle, similar to how Stakeout, Diversion, all the chargeable perks work, somewhere like that. The closer the killer is within the 32 meters of their terror radius, or 24, 20, or 16, whatever it happens to be, that will charge more and more. That is insanely powerful. You know when to run if you're committing to something. It's genuinely more useful than it was before. Now, obviously people will complain that, oh, but my vault speed build, yeah, that's gone, but that wasn't what Spine Chill was originally for. And I think it now actually does its job better than what it did before. Yeah, the repair speed and all that is a little bit harder to trigger now because it has to be in direct line of sight. But again, the information alone carries this perk. And so there were 2. Let me just place them in the order that they appear then. Prove Thyself at number 2 then. Prove Thyself increases your gen repair speeds by 15% per survivor near you. That is big, especially in this new meta, where killers may still be running slowdowns, and generators just take longer to do in general. Prove Thyself is going to be massive in the current meta, in my opinion. Now, there are ways to work around Prove Thyself as a killer, particularly Discordance comes to mind. But if survivors are well enough coordinated and they can manage Discordance well enough, Prove Thyself is definitely number 2 in the game. And that leaves number 1, Circle of Healing. With self-care now objectively out of the picture, Circle of Healing is absolutely going to be the best healing perk in the game. This perk allows you and anyone within the 24 meters of the totem to heal themselves at half speed, like self-care used to be, and can also obviously stack on other boons and just other like means of healing too. So Circle of Healing Botany Knowledge will be a strong combo if it's in play. And that completes the tier list. Let me know what you guys think. I did post this in my server and Aaron's server previously, but I'll quickly run through the perks again. So just to close up then the tier list, From bottom to top, we've got Red Herring, this is not happening. Kinship, Up the Ante, Buckle Up, Self-Aware, also known as Fixated, in case they ever change that back. Ace in the Hole, Hope, Inner Focus, Boon Dark Theory, Slippery Meat, No Mither, Dance With Me, Appraisal, Pharmacy, Guardian / Babysitter, Calm Spirit, Lightweight, Corrective Action, Premonition, Dark Sense, Solidarity, Blood Pact, Rookie Spirit, Urban Evasion, Left Behind, Plunder's Instinct, Self-Care, Power Struggle, Breakdown, Tenacity, Saboteur, Boon Exponential, Boil Over, Poised, Head On, Autodidact, Deja Vu, Medal of Man, Any Means Necessary, Lucky Break, We're Gonna Live Forever, Bite the Bullet, Blast Mine, Overzealous, Technician, Situational Awareness / Better Together, Flip Flop, Self-Preservation, Visionary, Small Game, Streetwise, Soul Survivor, Resurgence, Clairvoyance, Wake Up, Renewal / Second Wind, Quick and Quiet, Empathy, Empathic Connection, Inner Healing / Inner Strength, Fast Track, Stakeout, Botany Knowledge, Counterforce, No One Left Behind, Open Handed, Soul Guard, Flashbang, Deception, Breakout, Smash Hit, Balanced Landing, Leader, Windows of Opportunity, Vigil, Diversion, Built to Last, Residual Manifest, Detective's Hunch, Distortion, Desperate Measures, Aftercare slots in here because it's not here for some reason, Deliverance, Parental Guidance, Bond, Will Make It, Repressed Alliance, Off the Record, Borrowed Time, Decisive Strike, For the People, Alert, Unbreakable, Resilience, Dead Hard, Iron Will, Object of Obsession, Adrenaline, Kindred, Sprint Burst, Boon Shadow Step, Lithe, Overcome, Spine Chill, Prove Thyself, and lastly, Circle of Healing, which is a boon totem. And that's it for the tier list. Let me know what you guys think. These are all my opinions. Feel free to disagree. Feel free to tell me what you think I've done right or wrong. Give me your own opinions. We can always have a discussion either on or off stream. And yeah. Thanks for watching that. Let's move on to some games now.